Robert, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge podcast.
Hi there. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I was listening to opportunities, and I love the title of your podcast. Actually, where did that come from?
Oh, you know what? That's a really good question. So, when I first got started, and thanks for asking. When I first got started, it was called the Good Dad Project podcast, or the Good
Right.
Dad Project. And quite frankly, when I first started the brand, back in 2000, and I mean, I started the organization back in 2013, and it was Good Dad Project, Good Dad Project podcast, gooddadproject.com. Everything was Good Dad Project. The interesting thing is that Good Dad Project came to me as basically an inspiration and an idea in one of my darkest times as a father. And so, like, the Good Dad Project actually started as a Facebook page, and it started because my son, who's 14 now, he was 4 at the time, because of my childhood and the craziness that I grew up with. I grew up in a really abusive environment. I was like, I'm never going to put hands on my kids out of anger. Not going to do that. And I
Right.
did. I spanked my 4-year-old son. I didn't like beat him or hit him hard, but I hit him hard enough to where he was just a little guy and he lost his balance and fell. And I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? And I went to go help him up, and I and he looked at me like he was terrified. And to be honest, like, I had no clue what I was doing as a father. I
Hmm.
was your typical guy who was stressed out, maxed out, burning the candle at both ends, doing, short on patience, which is why it happened.
Right.
And I started that page, Good Dad Project, because the Good Dad Project originally was me. I was like, I'm not a good father and I need to be a better one. So I'm gonna view myself as a project. And I started learning things and posting them on that page. And then it never really felt right to me because Good Dad Project sort of had, I would say, like this more softer feel to it that I didn't
Right.
personally, as an individual, didn't resonate with.
Hmm.
And then I wrote a book called The Dad's Edge in 2015, just self-published it. And it was a few things that I had learned in the past few years.
Hmm.
And that title of that book was like, this feels right.
Right.
Men, I don't think men really resonate so much with being like a project. Like, it almost helps, it almost identifies us as like, I'm never good enough, like
Right.
which we're always work, right? But I do like having an edge, and I do like having the X factor, and I do like knowing things that I didn't know before, maybe even knowing things that other people don't know. And
Right.
that's where the name came from. Was original title of my book, but it also resonated with the audience and me in a big way.
Yeah. Wow, man. There's a lot in there. I'd love to dive into. First of all, this project thing, I totally agree. I when I work with people, I say you're a diamond, and really what we're doing is polishing. And this is a lifetime event, and you cannot polish a gem without the rubbing hurting a little bit. And so this is when we clean up our act and we cleanse out, our impurities, if you want to call it that way. We're just polishing the gem, right? We're trying to get all the mud off, because inside of us, we are all a brilliant gem. That's my true belief. But we get wrapped up in enculturation and all kinds of, we swim in dirty bathwater, really. From our upbringing, our childhood, and all the things that are kind of programmed into us, and this mutt sticks onto us, and so then we spend a lifetime getting that diamond revealed.
I think that's
Um,
a Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, no, and I wanted to say something else because I agree with you. This softness and the masculine, and there's, and this is a touchy subject, but there's such a negative association with the masculine, and for many good reasons, because men have been showing up in very poor ways. But what I really experienced and discovered for myself is when the masculine is really integrated with the feminine, which really you have your heart wide open, right? Our superpower as men is actually love and compassion. I'm firmly believe that, and when we can tap into that and activate that superpower, it still doesn't make us soft. It actually, a father's love, a man's love is firm. It's penetrative, right? It is one of it's powerful. It's it has charisma and presence and depth to it. And those are all beautiful masculine qualities. But, when they go out of whack, they end up as narcissism and cruelty. And, we're just so disconnected from our heart. And the final thing I wanted to say, I'm writing a new book actually, and I'm really diving into this masculine, feminine, and there's some existential qualities to that. And the doing is really one of these big misnomers in our society, in our Western culture. We're lost in doing. We forgot what it is to just be. Right? And the moment you're born, the moment you take your first breath, you are enough. You don't have to do anything to be more human. And so I wanted to just share those things because you had so much in there that are themes that I recognize quite a bit.
And I really appreciate that. And, you're right. Many of us think, so I've been doing this podcast for 7 years, have almost 1,000 episodes. Guys in the audience are usually fascinated when I interview men who have come from special forces, whether they're Green Beret, whether they're Army Rangers, whether they're Navy SEALs. And there's been a big common theme with some of these elite warriors who are like one of the most mentally tough, physically tough warriors on the planet. And their motivation comes from love and compassion. And they've said that on the podcast. It comes from love and it comes from compassion. I love this country. I love the people who are here so much. I love my family. I want to protect them because I love them. And it doesn't come from this place of like, I just want to go out and kill the enemy. It comes from this place of like, I love my country and I love my family and the people here so much that I'm actually willing to go die for them if need be. Right. So I'm so happy you said that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to really start with you and your story. Now, you didn't grow up in the States. You grew up in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Dutch originally. I had actually, I had a beautiful childhood. My father was a product of the war, so to speak. He grew up in World War II and lost his father and experienced the famine and the Reconstruction after the war. So that definitely colored him and his beliefs about life and how he raised us. I have two older brothers, so he was a great provider. I mean, he was very successful in his career. He was a self-made man. My mother had her own business. It's in all respects. I had a very beautiful, privileged childhood. Um, it was a little cold though. My parents' marriage kind of became a little bit loveless. They were very busy and focused on just not just paying the bills, but their careers. And I felt a little bit of a loner. And I was very artistic. I was very creative. I was also very good at sports, but my father didn't believe in that. I was a very promising tennis player, and he said, just go to school, that's not a real job. That's the kind of mentality he had, So he was a bit of a dream killer. And so when I was 21, I left for Australia. I thought that was about as far away as I could get. And I also windsurfed and sailed a lot growing up. And I went to sail yachts in Australia. I traveled around for a year. Then I went to the US. I drove a motorbike from the west to the East Coast. And then I kind of returned to this tennis dream. And for about 3-4 years, I was a tennis pro, kind of a journeyman, making a little bit of money coaching, playing some tournaments, running out of money, going back. It was sort of a day late and a dollar short. And I ended up the last year of that working in Indonesia for the Indonesian Davis Cup team that was sponsored by someone that hired me. And then, I got a small little knee injury, and I was 25. I said, I guess it's time to grow up, and do a real thing. And maybe my father was right. So I went to Atlanta at that time, and I went into real estate. I started for $7 an hour as a research analyst, and I went to night school. Started getting myself through, finished my college degree, and that led to quite a bit of success in real estate, and I graduated. Quite well, and Columbia Business School. Oh, your dog didn't like that part of the story.
That's my 150-pound puppy. So
yeah. And so I ended up in Ivy League Business School, and paid my way through that as well. And then I was picked up by GE in an executive management program. I was there for about 7 years. I made executive band at 34. I was an incredibly competitive guy. I was running, burning the candles on both sides. Similar to your story. But very successful in the eyes of the world. Here I was, this young buck, just kind of making, racing up the ranks in GE. And in the financial crisis, the part of G Capital I was part of, was kind of regulated away. The regulators came in. GE was actually inadvertently built out, but very little known. But so anyway, I wound down that unit and I bought up out of an orphan asset, as they call it, something that was just left over that they couldn't really sell. And that's how I got into business for myself. And that was beginning of 2009. And then I was building airports and infrastructure projects around the world. First year was really tough, but then we won a very big project in Colombia, Bogota at the airport. And from there, the company really took off. The money became really big. I worked with big pension funds and private equity guys. And, I wore a fancy suit and did all the things that come with that. And as I swam with the sharks more and more, I became more of a shark, and this is the type of person that we revere and glorify, the worldly success, the tycoon, the go-getter, the alpha guy, whatever you want to call it. But really what was happening is I was bankrupting my soul in the process. I was seeing way too much that I really couldn't stomach, but I had to swim in these waters or get eaten. And I became something that I just didn't even recognize anymore. And I had a sale event, an exit in 2015. I made a lot of money. I remember this flight back from Bogota, the last flight back to Miami. I just closed my office, sold my business, made a ton of money. And I had been making a lot of money already. I had this beautiful house, an oceanfront community, this picture perfect wife and 3 kids and cars and toys and you name it. And I was flying back and I was like, man, I've achieved, I'm 43 years old. I've achieved everything I set out to achieve. Why the F do I don't know if I can curse, but I literally asked myself, why the fuck do I feel so empty? Why am I not happy? Why does this not feel fulfilling? And this kind of started this period of, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I had really disintegrated as a man, as I call it these days. In business, what they call, smart and clever and cunning is really just, a ruthless asshole. I had become a cheater. I had, on all levels, I've lost my integrity. And I just couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I just couldn't respect the man I saw, even though the outer world was applauding me and my LinkedIn profile looked fantastic and everybody thought I was a big successful guy. And on the inside, I just couldn't reconcile it anymore. And so when this business fell away, I had a lot of time on my hands, so a lot of time to think. And this is what prompted this journey inwards. Really, it's just like there's got to be something else, because if this isn't it, then what is the meaning? What is the purpose? What are we here to do? And that kind of started this journey of I call into the inner world and explore that area of life.
I'm really glad we're talking about this topic. This goes as you're speaking, I go to that quote of be careful what ladder you climb, because you could get to the top and look out and be like, holy crap, I climbed the wrong one. And to be honest, I've always heard this from other podcast guests and I completely agree with it. And that is porn is the sneakiest and lowest hanging fruit addiction that a man will probably face, more so than overeating, more so than alcohol, more so than drugs, and even like sex, right? Because we kind of view it as like, oh, it's not really hurting anybody and it's not really that big of a deal. And what we understand after, what it does to the brain and how it rewires the brain, how it steals the intimacy and our energy and all these things as men, husbands, and fathers, but we don't view it that way. And we kind of view success in the career, while that's great, right? Because that we don't want to take away the positive things, the good things about doing well financially and doing well in our businesses. But if it comes at the expense of our soul, as you put it, comes at the expense of our families, or maybe even the connection with our kids, then it was all for nothing. The final thing I'll say is this, because I'm really curious. I want to dive deeper on the details around this. Is some people, I heard this quote, some people are so lonely, all they have is their money.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget seeing that meme on social media, and it was an old man and he had his back facing towards the photo taken. He was sitting on a park bench all by himself. And again, it said, some people are so lonely, all they have is their money. Yeah. Yet a lot of it, that's what we chase. And it's very scary. For you, um, you come across to me as at the core of who you are, even though we've known each other for like 15 minutes, is you come across to me as a very genuine individual, someone who has a very caring heart, someone who's loving and compassionate. When was it that you realized like, hey, this financial success is great, but I can see it starting to impact these things that are actually really important to me? What were some of the red flags along the way?
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. And if you don't mind, I want to kind of just first address you mentioned porn, and all the reasons you say are true, but I really believe we should also look at the harm we cause in this world. And there's a really simple reality is that demand creates supply. And so you watching porn enables a porn industry to exist. Now, on average, a young girl, typically these are very vulnerable girls. They're from broken homes, foster homes, lower income homes. They are recruited into this industry. They're usually, I think the average career spans about 2 or 3 movies, and they're discarded. They end up in strip clubs, they end up with drugs, they end up in prostitution. Now, you're watching porn, your demand creates that industry, right? When you snort a line of coke, you have the blood in the Mexican streets in your nose,
Dang.
right?
Think
And
about
and
that.
and we need to start looking at life in not just what's in it for me, but how can I minimize my impact, my harm in this world? Because everything in life is a self-organizing, complex living system. We are just a complex living system nested in bigger systems, from families to cities to states to nations to the whole world. And everything we do has an impact. And so if you want to be responsible for your life, right, think about in terms not just, me and my relationship with my wife and my energy, but think about it, what am I really doing? What am I creating here? What am I enabling? Right. So I just wanted to bring that perspective and this relates to porn, but drugs, alcoholism, all these things, right? We can create a much more beautiful world by just all being conscious about creating a little less harm. It's a big thing. Now, to answer your question on what kind of illuminated this, like, listen, I think I've always been a pretty good guy. I mean, I think that diamond was always there. I just got lost in this story, this narrative that's, society tells you, and it comes from low self-worth. I didn't really feel loved and seen by my father. And so I wanted to go out and prove how good I was, how smart I was, how rich I could become, right? I always kind of felt like, then I'll be recognized, I'll be validated. So I was seeking this validation, recognition on the outside, mostly my father, but also, just the world. I wanted to be applauded. I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to matter. I wanted to be someone. Well, the moment you want to be someone or something, right? Now you've put something outside of you, and there's a distance between you and that something that you just described. And that something is usually what society tells you need to do, or what your parents told you need to do to become someone, to be a man. And, I started to realize, like, this caused a lot of damage because I was always chasing this someone. And someone can be $1 million in your account, and then you get to $1 million. You're like, well, now I need to have $2 million. So you have very short, fleeting moments of joy when you're always chasing, because you move the goalpost as soon as you get it, right? You get that beautiful car, you have the brochure in your desk for a couple of months, you finally pull the trigger on it, you pick it up at the dealership, you're ecstatic for 3 weeks, you show it to all your friends, and then it's just a car driving you from A to B. And 2 years later, you're thinking about, I really want that car. And this is the way we go through life. Now, there's nothing wrong in abundance. There's nothing wrong in having beautiful businesses. There's nothing wrong in creating a beautiful life for you and your family. Absolutely nothing wrong. There's no spiritual law against abundance. The universe is abundant. But when we're lost in the story of chasing it, when we lose sight of, what it really means to be a human being, and how we show up in the world and what we really do, then, we get lost in this narrative. And I call that the finite game. And so we are kind of, most of humanity is lost in playing these finite games, these games that have winners. And if you're not winning, you get ranked. And the real true game, what I discovered, is what I call the infinite game. And the infinite game is you as a soul evolving to the greatest potential that you have within you. And that game is eternal. I happen to believe that, this is just one lifetime here, and there's many more, and many more that came before this time. And, what we're here to do is evolve as human beings and use all these experiences that we accumulate in this lifetime, and, basically polish that gem, that diamond, as best as we can. That's really where all the value is in life. And then what we do is just an expression of that. So our work, our business, our family, our life, our fatherhood just becomes expressions of that diamond we're trying to polish. And that's a different game. That's a completely different game with completely different rules. We're not caught up anymore in the finite games, right? Which also allows us to deal with failure and catastrophe in a completely different way. If you lose a finite game and you're devastated by that, and you spin out of control into a depression or anger or rage, you're causing a lot of damage, not just to yourself, but your entire environment. But when you're not as caught up in these finite games, you can actually, what I call, play freely. And when you play freely with life, you actually create the most beautiful art. It's autopoiesis, where life becomes self-poetry. How beautiful of a person can you be? If that becomes your goal, first of all, it's an infinite game, because it's never, the job is never done, right? Leonardo da Vinci said, art is never finished, only abandoned. So if that becomes our sole mission, our primary mission, then everything else becomes play. And when you play, you can create beauty and abundance and have joy in it, even when it seemingly is not going well, or is going well. Even not going well, it's just a learning experience.
Man, this is deep already.
I've been accused of that a few times, but
I like it.
I'll tell you how I got here, because I was truly a narcissistic asshole. I had become a narcissistic asshole. And people tell me, well, narcissism can't be cured. I say, absolutely. Everybody, every moment you wake up, every moment of the day, you can make a decision to be different. Don't ever take someone's power away to change. Everybody can change, right? This is the free will component of being a human being. Every moment of the day, yesterday doesn't count. It's there, we can learn from it, but what counts is right here, right now. And so I don't care what you've done. I don't care how bad you went off the rails. It doesn't matter. If you make a different decision today, you are creating a different life going forward. So you don't have to be stuck in what has happened. Just learn from it and wake up today and make a different decision. Now, this happened to me through adversity, and this is usually how we, what I call, awaken, because the universe presents us gifts wrapped in sandpaper: crisis, catastrophe, calamity, right? So we lose our job, we get divorced, we lose a loved one, our kids get sick, we get cancer, whatever it might be. Now, we typically see these as, a bad karma or whatever. It's not bad karma at all. It's just life. These are elements of life that are going to inherently come our way. And life is a roller coaster. And when these things present themselves, these are gifts. Because within these challenges, we have the opportunity to rise or get crumbled and crushed. And we don't learn that much from the really good times. We learn a ton, if we decide to, from those times when life was roughest, right? And so I had a hurricane. I decided to get divorced in 2017 with my ex-wife. Um, a week later, a hurricane wipes out a business that I'm invested in, that I'm the majority partner in, that I had bought kind of out of hubris. It was a restaurant business with 100 people that worked there. And it's the only deal I've ever done in my life with unlimited personal guarantee. So this hurricane wipes out this business, Hurricane Irma. The insurance doesn't pay out. We can't get the permits to rebuild it. I'm going through divorce. And by December of that year, I'm sitting in the morning, first with my bankruptcy lawyer, then with my divorce lawyer, and then with my permitting lawyer. And if we didn't, and I had a meeting next day with the county, and if we didn't get the opportunity to basically get the permits in some way, it was one call to the bankruptcy lawyer, and it was game over. So that devastated my balance sheet. It knocked me right off my horse. I fell from grace. I wasn't that successful guy anymore. Most of that money evaporated, but between the divorce and this money, this business losing, sucking up all my money, to not to go in default, I had to fund that. So I found myself stripped naked by the universe, completely stripped naked, nothing left. And in that moment, you have a choice. You have a choice to go really deep within and find your true powers and the true meaning, or give up and just unravel your life in some destructive way. And I had 3 kids, and I remember just thinking about these kids deserve the best of me. Because it was a part of me wanted to just give up, because everything I thought I was gone. And
Your identity.
everything.
Yeah.
My whole self-worth was tied up in my net worth, in my success, in all these things. And it just all unraveled in the course of the months. And earlier that year, my father had passed. So, and I never really fully processed, he had Parkinson in later stages of his life. So, we couldn't really ever get that to neutral ground of forgiveness. And so I had work to do. And, the biggest decision I made in that time, I decided to go into therapy. It was the first time the alpha male surrendered and said, I can't solve this by myself. I need help. And that's really where the process of healing really truly started taking place.
I have so many questions. I hope the audience is prepared, because we're going to go for 3 hours. No, I'm kidding. But
let's do it. Let's do it. If people, I'm happy to talk about it. It's a privilege to talk about it. You know that?
Yeah.
Because if you can touch one other life in some way, then all my pain is worth all of it, right?
Yeah.
And pain is only relative. You suffer in the moment, but then you forget too.
So our stories together, you and I just want to make a quick reflection here, and then I want to ask you another question around that. Actually, I'm going to ask you the question first, so you can think about it, and then as I'm doing the reflection. But here's the question: it doesn't matter what level of success you've gotten to. Call it financial, call it career-based, call it fitness, call it, whatever, right? Marriage, anything. At times in our life, we have a fall from grace, right? Or the world just crumbles down completely. And it's in that moment, like you said, I can either use this as a learning moment and keep going, or I could give up and allow this to defeat me, which, by the way, as you're sharing your story, I would bet almost anybody in your circle of friends, maybe not iron sharpens irons friends, like, that have their best interest out for you, but everyone around you would probably, if you decided to give up and just sort of give in and not move forward or past it, people would be like, well, dude, that's kind of understandable. Like, and give you that pass and give you that forgiveness. Be like, yeah, man, like life will never be the same, like, because of this. It's in that moment that I see men make those decisions of like, yeah, I'm just going to go back to the life that I had, which is, it's miserable, but I know it, and it's comfortable because I know it. And the idea of growing and learning is very uncomfortable because it's uncertain. And I'm at a point right now where if I get knocked down again, I don't know if I'll get back up. Like sometimes that's what we're thinking. So that's my question to you is what was the moment where you had decided, or what advice would you give for men who are in that season where they can go either direction? So that's the question. But here's the reflection. The reflection is this. I too, so I grew up in this crazy broken family, right? Of fathers that were constantly in and out of my life, and abusive guys and toxic guys and alcoholics and physical, mental, emotional abuse and all this stuff. I didn't even meet my biological father for the first time until I was 12. And that was by accident. Then we
Right.
had a 6-month relationship. He left again. Met him by accident when I was 30. Now, what I can tell you is that in the moment of me being a father, because I was a father without doing this work for 6 years. So my oldest was 6, youngest was 4, had that incident, what I did with my 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And to be honest, up until that point, I had been living this victim mindset of like, well, it's impossible for me to show up as a father because of my background. Right. And I would like lean on that. That actually made sense to me. And now I look back on that, I'm like, that was an excuse. That was a story I was telling myself to keep me from growing.
Right.
It wasn't until I had that moment that I was telling you about where I created that Facebook page that night, tears in my eyes, like I need to do this differently. I just don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to do it. I call that, I'm actually releasing a book called The Surrender. I'm sorry, The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. But there's a chapter in there called The Surrender. And that's where a man does exactly what you did, does exactly what I did. And it's like, you know what? The past is the past. I don't have this figured out. I don't know exactly what the future is going to look like, but I'm sure as hell going to learn along the way. And that's what it looked like. And then the last thing I'll say from a reflection standpoint is this: you talked about in there, in that last segment of the journey and the learning and even like the play aspect of it, which I love. Right. So I'm working with a publisher. My book is coming out on September 6th as we speak. It's called The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. Now, what I can tell you about the title is my publisher was like, just call it Legendary Fatherhood. I was like, no, it's not Legendary Fatherhood, because what that does is that basically states that I've gotten to the place where it's the end of the destination.
It's static. Yeah.
Right. And that's
Versus
not
dynamic.
versus dynamic, because that's not what fatherhood is, man.
Yeah.
Like, and my publisher is not a dad. I was like, that's not what fatherhood is. Fatherhood is a journey. It's a pursuit, and it's the learning along the way. I don't personally think you ever actually reach it to the top of the mountain, but you can actually traverse that mountain pretty damn far and pretty effectively and efficiently if you learn the things along the way. So that's why I called it The Pursuit, because it's right in line with what you're talking about. But yeah,
no, I love it. And I'll respond to a couple of those things. First of all, we have this notion there's nothing fixed in this world, absolutely nothing, right? Life is a dynamic flow, and we're moving through time and space. Even things that we think are static are subject to entropy, which is the second law of thermodynamics. So even with a table, a car, a house, we think these things are static, but they're not. And so when we're attached to things in a very unstable, chaotic world, which is everything outside of us, it's in a constant flux of change. Your whole life, nothing has ever been the same. There's no one day you wake up and things are not different. They might appear very similar, but on an energetic level, nothing is ever the same. Everything is always changing. Everything is always evolving, which also gives us the wisdom that this too shall pass. Wherever the fuck you are right now, it will pass. That is just a law, but we believe in the moment it will never pass. This is where we get hopeless, right? Now, you asked me that question. So what, the first thing you have to do in life, if you want to take control of it, now control meaning, directing it to the maximum extent, because we don't really have any control over our life. Not the outside world. We have a control over our inner world. But you have to take 100% responsibility for every single thing in your life. Now, the reason for that is if you blame that person did something, she left me, he fired me, this economy crashed, when you put the blame or the responsibility anywhere outside of you, you've just abdicated all your power. Because what you're saying, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just happening to me. Now you're just a leaf in the wind. You're just hoping the wind blows favorably, right? Abdicated all your power. Now, it's really difficult because when our life doesn't look so pretty, right? And a lot of shit is happening in our life. It takes real courage to say, you know, I own every single part of this. Even if I don't really know or understand how I created it or how I was a part of this, there is actually spiritual truth to the fact that in some way we created everything in our life. Even attracting a partner that was the wrong partner that then screws us over, which in business or relationships or whatever, right? We even attract that into our life. And so when we take 100% responsibility, now we're coming from power. Because now I just reclaimed that if I'm 100% responsible, it also means I have 100% the power to change it. And so what can I do to change this? How can I evolve? How can I change? How can I grow? Because, you know, when I grow, when I change, when I, you know, take different actions, try different things, then the outside world is going to change. It's going to respond. It's the corresponding nature of reality. I mean, like the world will correspond to you in a different way if you start doing different things. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. Albert Einstein, right? And so, you know, the responsibility, taking the responsibility is the first thing. The second thing that I would suggest to anybody, if you want true freedom, really, really true freedom, really play your life, you have to let go of this idea that you have to become someone or something to be someone. And what I mean by that is you have to be okay being nobody. And ultimately, we are all in the totality of this universe. We're all just a speck of stardust floating through this life. 80 years. This Earth has been here 4.5 billion years. You know, our life is not even a nanosecond in time and space, right? And so when we can be okay to be nobody, when we no longer need any validation or recognition, we can come from a place of self-love. I just love me for what I am. In all my imperfections, I'm perfect, right? When we come from that place, now we have the freedom to be anybody. Because really, most of us are just wearing a mask, trying to play a role that we think everybody wants us to be. We're not really being ourselves. We're being what we think we ought to be loved. So we're seeking this validation and recognition from the outside world. Well, now you're a prisoner of the outside world. And when you take that mask off, which is a very courageous act, and you start looking at yourself, it's like, well, what do I want to create in my life? How do I want to show up? And if I'm okay being a nobody, if I can let go of needing all this validation, recognition, if I can give myself structure and self-love and respect, if I can look I have this exercise I do every night. I look myself in the mirror and I ask myself, you know, my challenge is I want to respect the man I see in the mirror, because there was a time in my life I couldn't look at myself. I couldn't look for what I had become and how I showed up in life. And if you can look in the mirror every night and genuinely tell yourself, you know, I wasn't perfect today, but I did the absolute best I could. I gave it all I got, right? And whatever faults I had and mistakes I made, I accept them. I did the best I could. Now, if you could say that to yourself every night, your life will completely transform.
That's really good advice. One of the things you said that hit me the biggest was if you were seeking validation through the external world, you become a prisoner to the external world.
100%.
Right. Which is, that's what a lot of us do. Like, am I good enough? Let me go look through somebody else's eyes and hear their words. And then if it's okay, then I'll go ahead and say I'm okay. I think that's why we chase as men probably titles, financial success,
Sure.
annual reviews, attaboys, like all these things. That this is why I think men get really, really sucked into the career path, because we feel valuable. We feel validated. Like, I'm making a difference. Look at me. I actually have documentation to prove it. And when it comes to our own internal work, or maybe even our marriage and relationships, where if you think about it, because we talk about this all the time on the show, which is, if you think about anything you do for a living, right? Call it a firefighter, police officer, whatever. There's a certain amount of hours and training that goes into that particular craft and that skill. You can't run into a burning building and save somebody. I mean, you could, right? But your chances of doing it successfully go up exponentially if you're trained to do so. And if you look at things like our own mind, our own heart, the conversations we're having with ourselves, our marriages, parenting, and if we're not getting that training, we don't really feel up to the task, which then we sort of dissociate from the things that we're not trained on, because we're not getting the validation, and we'll go get it in our jobs, or go get it in our success. Or, for some guys, they'll go get it like in jujitsu, right? Because I'm really good at jujitsu. I'm gonna spend all my time there. So things like that. Your book is.
Can I say something? Because
No.
language is really important. Language and words are very powerful. And there's a misnomer in our language where we say, when I ask you, what do you do? And you say, I'm a firefighter, right? Now I'm identifying with being a firefighter, which is an archetype. I am a businessman. I am a father. I'm a this. Really, the way to look at these things is, I do firefighting for a living. I do fatherhood as a role of fulfilling my my fatherhood duties, right? I do being a husband, because as soon as you identify, you're kind of like locked into this archetype. You're locked into this, and you're like, you are infinite as a soul. You are not any of these things. Who you are is this spirit, this consciousness, this soul inside. That's the only thing you are. Everything else is something you do in this life. And so, and this is part of kind of stopping to identify with these things as this is who I am, right? Who you are is this beautiful little soul that came in and got a body and a brain, which produces a mind, produces your thought. You're not your thought either, right? Because you can observe your thought. So this body is just a vehicle in this lifetime. Take good care of it. But all it is a vehicle to experience this life on earth. And I move through this movie called life. So how can I make this the most beautiful movie possible? How can I be both the director and the writer of the script, rather than playing in everybody else's movie what they want me to play, right? And when you do that, that's where authenticity comes from, because we're all born and we each have a unique gift. Every single human being is a unique puzzle piece of the mosaic called humanity. And we are each born with unique talents, powers, and superpowers and gifts. And when we align with those, we find that which drives us, which we're passionate about, which gives us meaning in life, right? And it's going to create abundance almost effortlessly, because this is stuff that we are just made to do. And when we can figure out, our own little puzzle piece, right, and what that is, and disregard what the world says, it's no more important that you're Elon Musk or a school teacher. It makes no difference. It's like, are you in alignment with these talents and gifts and superpowers that you are here to bring into this world? That's a seed that's placed into you. Every dream, every inspiration you have, by definition, you have the capabilities to do it. If it's a true dream and a true inspiration, if it's not inspired from something in the outside world, because there's no cruelty in this universe. You wouldn't be given the dream or the inspiration if you didn't have the innate abilities to do it. Now, you might have to work and cultivate these skills and talents and go to school or learn a craft or whatever. But I promise you, if you have the dream and the inspiration to do it, you have the innate capacity to do it. This is not a cruel universe, right? So starting to express this authenticity in the world is how we create ourselves as self-poetry, right? You're both you're the sculpture and the sculptor, right? And so sculpt what you want. This is all in your control, right? Screw the world. Go make the most beautiful sculpture you can come up with. And that's your gift to the world. And if you show up in that way, well, it's going to light a fire in your wife, because it's going to be deeply inspiring to her to see a man that can stand in his truth. Of course, you're also loving and compassionate and all that stuff. But, a woman um, is inspired by a man that has a mission in his life, that has a
Yeah.
purpose, that has a drive, that will just light her fire, right?
Yeah.
Your kids will look up to you. And again, you come from love and compassion, but your job as a father is not to be a wussy. Your job as a father is very different as a mother.
Yeah.
Your job as a father is to set the aspirations and values and create the space and provide safety and protection so they can blossom, right? And give them the tools so they can succeed in life, and give them the courage, encouragement, inspiration, build them up, right? And then you release them into the world, which the mothers can never do. So the father needs to get involved for that, right? Because they need to be released into the world, and we're prepping them to go in the world and to go do beautiful things, hopefully. Well, when you can show up like that, people are going to see you, and you're going to have a presence about you. You're going to have a depth about you. You're probably going to be focused on something that's really moving for you, which people are going to like, no matter what it is, people are going to be like, wow, this guy really has charisma. When he walks in the room, he has a presence about him. He commands a conversation. He's got a depth to him. And where we're lost, I think, so much in masculinity in this world today is that in all these shallow pursuit of just trophies, we're a shadow of the man that we could be. And I think the true masculine archetype, the true one has backbone, is wise, is strong, is courageous, is virtuous, is loving, is compassionate about every human being, not just the ones in our country, every human being in this world, right? We show up with kindness. We show up, all this hate and racism, all these things we see in the world. It's madness. It's complete madness. How are we allowing this? How are we allowing ourselves to disintegrate our thoughts to that level? We're all just human beings figuring things out. And so, I think when you really activate that power that's within you, you become a lighthouse. And it doesn't matter what you do. You can be a master plumber. I don't care. I've met master plumbers that are 10 times more spiritually advanced than some of the biggest, richest tycoons I met, right? It's not in what you do. It's how you show up in life. It's the only thing that matters. Everything else is details. Who gives a shit? I don't care what your bank account says. I want to see you. What's your substance, right? Show me your substance. Show me your character. Show me how deep you can love, even when, as Jesus said, I'm not a particularly religious guy, but Jesus said beautiful things. Can you turn your other cheek? Can you not be triggered when someone insults you? Can you do that? Can you have that courage? Can you be so strong in your heart and forgive that person even when they fuck you over, even when they screw you, even when they do wrong to you? Because when we reciprocate in revenge, we have, as Confucius say, have to dig 2 graves. We will not break any cycle of hate, violence, war, injustice, inequality by repeating it. We have to break these cycles, and that takes a real courageous man who says, yeah, I know you hurt me. I know you damaged me, and I know all of those things. And still, I am not going to stoop to your level. I'm going to stand above it. Now, that takes fucking courage. It's really easy to retaliate. It's really easy to hit back, right? And that is the masculinity we really need in our world, in our leadership, in our communities, in like, you know, where do we take a stand? Anyway, I went a little bit on a dissertation because this is like what I'm most passionate about, because I don't see it enough.
Mm-hmm.
We're lost in chasing trophies, in shallow bullshit. Look at social media. It's an armpit.
This
Like,
is good.
sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, you're good. Yeah,
Um,
this is really good, and I love the depth of the work that we're talking about. I'm gonna add one more quick reflection
yeah,
here that I
yeah,
think will
sure.
really hit this home. But I want to ask you a question, and again, I'm going to ask you the
Please.
question
Yeah,
so you can think about it, and that is, so everything that you're talking about is beautiful in theory, right? And I understand it because I've been doing pretty much the same work you have for the past 7 years. So I get it. I understand it. I experience it and I execute it. I know full well the people in the audience are like, okay, this is great on paper, but how does this show up when I'm challenged as a father? How does this show up when I'm not getting intimacy with my wife? How does this show up when I'm like, I view myself, and the story that I tell myself is I am not a good communicator with my wife, and therefore I don't open up to her a lot, which she's been telling me, like, you need to talk to me more. And I'm not communicating. So, like, all these like little battles that we have as men, husbands, and fathers, how do we
yeah,
take the skills that you're talking about and actually implement those, like literally like press the button and
yeah.
insert it into this situation? So I would love for you to give a real world example. Um, not that I don't think what you're saying is valuable. I think it's 10x valuable. And I love every bit of it. And every time you're saying, I'm like, yes, yes, this is also true. But I want to simplify this for the audience when they're confronted with something. They're like, okay, there was a lot of things there, but what do I do right now? Right. But here's my reflection. One of my wife's all-time favorite movies, and I'm kind of taking a deep breath, and maybe a part of me is kind of rolling my eyes because it's a chick flick. And I do watch the movie with her like at least once a year because it's her favorite movie, but
All right,
I'm not
all
the
right.
biggest fan of it just because it's a chick flick. And that one of her favorite movies is The Holiday with Kate Winslet, Jude Law's in it, Cameron Diaz.
All right.
And it's funny, you know, there's some funny parts, but my wife just loves the heck out of the movie. There's this one part though. So Kate Winslet plays this lady who basically is in love with this guy that she works with for like 3 straight years. And he keeps coming in and out of her life, you know, wanting to like sleep with her and having a relationship with her and have an affair with her. And he's engaged to be married to this other woman and has been with this other woman for like the exact same amount of time. And she's like, oh my God, I'm like so in love with this dude. And he just, why won't he commit to me? Like, what's wrong with me? And he's always after this other woman. So she befriends this older man who is a director and producer, like back in the day. He's this older guy and he lives down the street from where she lives. And then he goes out to dinner and he says very similar to what you just said, which is, you know what, in life, you are the director, you're the producer, and you're the main character, and you can have the life that you want. So he challenges her after she goes through this sob story of like, why I just can't do this. I can't do that. He's like, why are you playing the part of the supporting actress in your own movie? Like, why are you playing the victim that doesn't have control over anything? Why don't you step back into that role of being the director, the producer, the main character, and rewrite this whole thing? And then you saw it click for her, like, that's exactly what I've been doing. And I do need to recognize that. And I do need to step into that. So back to the question of what do we do in moments, right? As
Right.
fathers and husbands,
No,
maybe it's in businesses
I
or
tell you,
whatever.
but I have to kind of lay a foundation.
Yeah.
The reason we don't speak our truth, right? We wear a mask, most of us, all the time. We play this role that we think the world wants us to play. We play the role we think our wife wants us to play, our parents, our boss, whatever, right? Is because at our very core, we're too fragile for the truth. And we're too fragile to speak our truth because we are afraid for rejection. Now, that's why we go mum. Now, I know I've been in relationships. I'm in a relationship now. And I have a rule in my relationship. And she can spar with me at this level. We have a rule that no matter what it is, we are going to be 100% raw, authentic, and pure. We're going to speak our truth, no matter what that is. Now, this can be on very sensitive subjects. I mean, I'll ask any man here, have you ever really, truly told your wife your sexual fantasies? Have you actually, like, really, truly shared them? Have you ever dared to ask her? Right? No, because you're afraid to be rejected. You're afraid she's going to think you're a pervert or you're a weirdo. Well, I tell you something. You'd be surprised if you have the courage to have that discussion and lead her to that place. You can have a 20-year marriage and refigure it with passion you've never believed. You have no idea what might be living with her. But even if you get rejected, it's not rejection. You spoke your truth. It doesn't mean that you impose something on her or anybody else in this world. But your only job is to really speak your truth and be in truth and always come from love and compassion. Now, I do have something that you can create. It's called a sacred container, and it has 3 rules. First of all, you set this. I mean, you could do this with your wife, your boss, or employees if you have them, even with your kids. You say, okay, everything's set in this sacred container, right? It's going to be non-judgment, non-repercussion, and unconditional love. And then you really, you shake hands on it, or you do some kind of gesture. Now, non-judgment, because we will not speak up our mind or whatever is in our heart if we feel we're going to be judged. Non-repercussion, because if we say one thing and it's used against us 2 weeks later, there will never be trust again. You will never share anything from the bottom of your heart again. And unconditional love, because when we can listen to our partner, our kids, our boss, our employees, our parents from unconditional love rather than this identity of ourselves, we can just disconnect kind of our personal emotional triggers from it and just say, you know, this is just this person's truth. It's just their experience of life. It has nothing to do with me. It's not personal to me. Even when it relates to me, it's just their experience of me. It doesn't make me anything different, but I can respond to it now because now it's come up to the surface. And so when you could open up that dialogue at this really raw, truthful level, which takes 2 people to be willing to go there, now you can have a real discussion. Because if you can listen to your wife and have her explain to you what she's missing, dreaming of, whatever, like, isn't that fantastic information? Doesn't that open the whole world? Like, we men need instructions. Please tell me what you need. Now, at the same time, if that's something that I cannot give, stand in your truth and have your boundaries and say, that I cannot do. My boundaries are here. And as a man, the firmer your boundaries, the more she will appreciate you, even though in the moment she might not like it. But she will respect it. Right? If they're truthful and you share them in a loving, compassionate way, not in a fight, not in anger, not in rage, not in calling each other's name, because it's not unconditional love, right? I'm just going to love you as a person. I'm going to forget about the fact that we're married. I'm just going to love you as a person. This is your truth. You're just sharing something very intimate with me. And I'm going to open up to that and see what I can do with that. How can we grow and get better from this? So to me, this is courage. This is wisdom. This is all these things I'm talking about. But, you know, we don't have these conversations with our wife. So, you know, our marriage kind of flatlines, the passion kind of disappears. And then what, you know, specifically because you mentioned, like, my wife doesn't want intimacy. Well, this is what I found out. I mean, it's my general belief. Women are really love machines, and love is their sacred fuel. But when we're in a fight with our girlfriend, wife, partner, whatever, when when it gets too heated, right? A lot of times what we do is we turn our back and we say, you know, I just need to cool off. I'm going to go out, drink a beer with buddies. I'm going to, whatever, have a cigarette outside. I'm just going to, like, you know. And what you're doing is withdrawing love. This is male manipulation. You are taking away her sacred fuel source. And in that moment, if you can have the presence within you, right, to lean in harder and say, you know what, I know we're in a totally disagreement right now and we're in a fight, but I first of all want you to know I'm not going anywhere. And second of all, I want you to know, no matter what you tell me, I'm going to just love you a little harder right now. because I know the reason you don't feel connected with me is because you don't feel loved. And so tell me, how can I make you feel more loved? Now, a well-loved woman, I can promise you, is insatiable. It's just her natural wiring. When she feels loved and seen and heard, there's no way that she is not an absolute tiger in the bedroom. Because she just wants to share that. I mean, you've infused her with that. So when she is not interested in being intimate, your first question to yourself is how in which way is she not receiving my love? Because you might think you're loving really good, but if it's not received, what's the point? Like, the point is that she receives it, that she feels it. So you can ask her, what would make you feel more love? What can I do? Because I feel this love for you, but just me feeling it is not enough if you can't receive it, if you can't feel it. So what does it take for me to do so you can feel more love? And I can promise you, in all my experience, and there's been a few, if you can make her feel loved, right, and really seen and really heard, we men, we can go 1 or 2 rounds. She can go fucking 20 rounds a day. I mean, like, don't worry about her libido. Her libido is derived from feeling loved and appreciated and valued. And when she's in that place, unless there's some medical condition, you're not going to have any of these problems.
Guys, I can put a stamp of approval on everything that Robert just said. So over the past 7 years since I've been learning these things, I've been married for almost 20 years. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, the past 5 to 6 years have been the best we've ever had. And I would say the past 3 years are the best of the freaking best. Like, we have more connection, more communication, more sex, more passion, all of it. And I got to tell you, man, a lot of this was my purview. Like, when I was making mistakes early on, it's like, man, I'm doing all these things. Like, I'm going up to her, I'm kissing her, I'm hugging her, like, I'm showing her affection, I'm slapping her on the ass, like, I'm doing all these fun things, right? And I compliment her how beautiful she is, and I'll do the dishes, and like, why isn't she responding to that? Like, that was my younger self, right? And then I realized, oh, wait a second. So when I'm physically affectionate with my wife, one of her mental and emotional triggers are, you want something from me. You have an agenda. That's why you're being affectionate with me. And sometimes, I'll be real honest, sometimes I had an agenda, sometimes I didn't. But it all fell within that perspective, and that's the filter she ran it through. So we had the conversation a long time ago with what you're talking about. And she was just very boldly telling me, like, I know this comes from a good place in you. Okay. I know you're trying to love me, but when you come up behind me and slap me on my ass and, start kissing my neck, that's not loving me the way I get it. In fact, that annoys me a little bit because I feel like I'm in the middle of doing dishes. I have a million things to do, and you want sex from me. And I would tell her, I'd be like, well, sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes just trying to be affectionate. She's like, that's not the affection that I need, though. And I was like, well, what is the affection that you need? She's like, when you help me with something, or you just listen to me instead of like giving me advice, and she listed off like 5 things, and I'm like, oh my God. Because the way I was perceiving it is like, oh, this makes total sense to me. I would feel loved if this was happening to me. That's not the way it was landing. So all these efforts that I was doing, they were never landing. And here's the other crazy thing, right? You talk about external validation. When it wouldn't land right, I would get pissed and resentful. Well, I'm doing all these things. Why aren't you responding? And then I realized, well, that's not how she receives love. So of course she's not going to respond that way. Well, now I know. Now I know the key. And here's the funny thing too, right? Even now that I've known her for so long, and I know how she receives love, and I see her doing the dishes, and I see her in these beautiful yoga pants, and I just want to go up and like put my arms around her waist and give her a kiss on the cheek and tell her how bad I want her and all this stuff. Instead, what I do this a lot. I'll go up to her, I'll give her a kiss on the cheek, I'll still put my hands on her hips, and I'll just say, I don't want a thing from you. I just want to let you know I'm here, and I just want to let you know I love you. And I do that without agenda. I don't do that because I want to get my wife in the bedroom. I do that because I want my wife to feel seen. I want her to feel love, right? And even if I'm going to do it in a physical way, I want her to know, like, hey, I'm doing this without expectation. And I don't want you to feel the heaviness that I have an agenda that now you feel the obligation to fulfill, which puts more tension on us. And I have noticed that those tweaks have literally become the catalyst to making my wife a tiger in the bedroom, as you say, which is a great thing. Because here's the other thing too. You said men need maps. I needed her to tell me.
Yeah.
Like this is
Well,
not the,
and any person really,
yeah.
we can't read anybody's mind. Nobody can. And so, this is also reverse, right? I mean, there's things that our wife might do that, or things we feel we need that she's not doing. But do we share that? Do we express that? Do we give her like the chance to actually do it? Because if you keep it inside, how the fuck is she supposed to know?
Yeah, she does. She's not a mind reader either.
I mean, like how you're supposed to know with anybody. I mean, this goes in friendships, this goes with bosses, this goes with any relationship with any other human, your kids. We don't really speak this way with our kids. Like sometimes you can ask them, like, well, if they're sad or whatever, they want more attention. Well, what would you like? I have 3 kids. They all want something different from me.
Yes.
Because my daughter wants to color with me. My oldest son wants to play basketball outside, and my youngest wants to read a book. I mean, like, different things mean different things to them, you know? Um, so I think it's beautiful that you second that, and it's all about taking that mask off and just being raw and pure, not in an angry or a bitter way, but more like, I'm good enough. I'm good enough to share what I need. I'm good enough, and there's the love. We're building a love relationship, right? Which is a dynamic thing as well. Because if you don't keep it alive, you don't invest in it, that love will kind of fizzle and then a small little, you know, pilot light remains and, your roommates,
Yeah. What you don't.
right? But she doesn't want to be roommates either,
Nope.
right? And when you open it up, and I'm sure this happened with you as well, when you can speak her love language, she also will open up sides to her that you didn't even know were fucking there.
Yep.
I mean, she will blow your mind in like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I was married for 15 years. And you're like, why the fuck did I never see this before? Like,
Yeah.
where's this coming from?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a liberation as well if you can create, especially in a relationship, when you can get to that kind of raw communication, that kind of trustworthy sharing of like what we really truly need, then that deepening of the trust and that kind of like just really bonds in such a way, it's beautiful. And then all kinds of things will come up and sides of your wife or your spouse will be exposed that you're like, oh my God, I have no idea. And
Yeah.
this is fun, right? I mean, it's a whole new person that's like, just an other dimension, other layers that are revealing themselves because they were wearing a mask too.
Mhm.
She grew up, with some beliefs about what she needed to be a good wife and a good mother and a good thing. I mean, she's wearing all kinds of masks too. The more of these masks you can take off, really, the more depth you can find in these relationships and the deeper the connection will be and the more you can grow together. And it's a beautiful thing. It's not easy. I mean, you need to be committed to these things. But it's also just a decision. I think as men, we have the opportunity to lead in this. This is an opportunity where you can really show your leadership, not in that you're forcing it on her, but you're opening up this path where this level of communication becomes possible, and you do that by being vulnerable yourself, right? Taking the armor off around your heart, and drain that moat around your heart, and be willing to be vulnerable because it invites her to be vulnerable. It opens up a space for her to share those inner, deepest feelings and thoughts. And from there, you can, like you say, I mean, like you can find the next level and the next level and the next level. This is an endless journey. And never break that trust. This is so problematic when we don't keep our word, when we allow weakness, which I personally believe infidelity is weakness, of the flesh. You know, when we let testosterone rule our life, her trust in us is really what anchors all this stuff.
Oh, totally.
And if she cannot trust you, she cannot let her guard down.
Well, this goes back to three basic needs of a woman: seen, heard, and safe. If she can't trust you, she's not going to feel safe. If she doesn't feel safe, that's going to decimate the relationship overall, without a doubt. Man, Robert, this has been awesome. Your book, like I said, Never Enough-itis.
Yep.
I know you wrote that, which I'll tell you, if seeing that on the bookshelf, go to Barnes and Noble or Amazon, you're like, yeah, I need that. That title, man, it's capturing. But I want to make sure that the guys can connect with you, maybe go grab your book. But where's the best place guys can find the book and connect with you?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon. The audiobook just came out, hardcover as well. So it's available there. I think at barnesandnoble.com. I don't know in which bookstores it might carry it, but I definitely online. I have a website, robertalthuis.com. That's more about my work. I have an Instagram account called at Robert Althuis. It's Althuis. It's a weird Dutch name, but it's easy in the way that nobody else has this crazy name. And so those are good places to find me and kind of follow me. I'm a little quiet on social media. I'm actually writing my second book, so I'm a little bit in a creative cocoon.
Yeah, man.
But I'm really excited about writing that second book. And yeah, anybody that wants to reach out or has a question, there's multiple ways you can reach out to me. And if you wanted to work with me, you can book a call on my website. So any of that stuff is available. And if they read my book and it means anything to them, I'd love to hear the feedback, and I'd love the reviews on Amazon if they care. But it's been a beautiful journey writing that book. It really started as self-therapy, to be honest.
Yeah.
And evolved into a book, so to speak. So
cool. It's good stuff, man. You're doing good work in the world, and it's super authentic and super meaningful. Gentlemen, don't worry about the spelling of Robert's last name or anything like that. I'll have the links in the show notes for you guys. You don't have to worry about typing any of that in. Just head on over to thedadedge.com/Friday56 for this episode. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday56. We'll have all of Robert's links in there for you: social media, website, the whole 9 yards, as well as a link to go get a copy of his book, as well as all of our resources as well. So, Robert, this has been awesome, man. And
thank you. I really enjoyed it too. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, you're doing great work in the world, man. And this was so appropriate. Especially what I would say, like even all of our kids are on summer break right now. If you have a kid in full-time school, right?
Yeah, my kids have another 10 days to go, but or another week to go. But
yeah, when this podcast releases, everybody will be out for summer, which is cool. And this is such a beautiful time to recalibrate relationships in such a way, like you're talking about. Like, hey, what are some needs that you have? Like, let's reassess like how we're showing love and affection, making sure it's landing. Because at this point in time, during the summertime, we're spending more time with our families. So why not make it efficient and effective, right?
Yeah. So. And the one thing I would add, especially with your kids, but also every relationship you have, you claiming yourself and showing up in the most authentic version of yourself, maskless, right? Vulnerable in a way, but it's kind of like kicking in an open door. I mean, like once you make yourself vulnerable, you're actually not vulnerable anymore, because what can someone do to you? But you being in that most authentic, raw version of yourself gives permission to everybody in your circle to also do that. And this is again this fatherly leadership that we bring into the world, because what we do and how we show up gives permission to other people. Now that's both on the beautiful virtues in life and also on the other ones. When you're lost in greed, malfeasance, cheating on your taxes, all these things, right? You are giving permission to others to do it. And so if you look at yourself as like, I'm going to set the standard for not just my world, but anybody in my world, right? Anybody I touch, this is the standard. Well, if every man in this world would find the courage and the balls to do that, and the heart and the wisdom, right? This will be a very different world. So
I agree. We say this a lot of times in our mastermind community, that authenticity is contagious. When you are
100%.
when you're your most authentic self, you actually give others permission and inspiration to do the same.
And the one other thing I wanted to share is, no matter your role in life, as a man, you are a leader.
Yeah.
You are a leader within your group of friends. That doesn't mean you're the alpha leading the pack, but every single one of us, if there's a group of 10 guys coming together, there's 10 leaders in that group. And, humans operate through osmosis. Osmosis meaning we take on the colors of people that we associate with. And so if you start seeing yourself as a leader in every single situation where you are, even when you're talking to your boss, you're a leader there. Because what you do and how you show up through osmosis rubs off on him or her too, right? So if we start showing up in life like that, it's a game changer. It's a total game changer. And you will walk around with presence, because you will know for yourself, like, I'm here in the world leading. So the way I talk to the checkout counter girl, right? The grocery bagger, the way I talk to anybody in this world matters.
Yep. It does. And your kids are watching you
All the time.
all the
They
time.
actually, they learn more from what you do than what you say.
Best lessons are caught, not taught. So
100%.
yeah, man. Like I said, dude, this has been an amazing show. I want to have you back and even talk more, and
Let's do it.
especially when you launch the second book.
Yeah, perfect. I'd
Love
love
to
it.
have you back on.
Yeah, I'd love that opportunity. Let's stay in touch, and
Of course.
I'm always available. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate it, and
I got you.
appreciate the invite, by the way. So thank you.
You bet. Gentlemen, like I said, head on over to thedadedge.com/Friday56 to connect with Robert, to connect with me, everything that we're doing over at Dad Edge. Robert, thank you so much for coming on, man. Words of wisdom, knowledge bombs. And the really cool thing too is I love how you gave all this content and these beautiful things in not only mindset, but heart set theory, but you also shared some strategies for us to put it into real life practice. So thank you so much for doing that.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your kind words. And, I think there's a lot of talk in the world right now, right? That women are going to change the world and all that, but this world is not going to change unless men also evolve.
Oh yeah.
And we have to rise to a different level of intelligence, a different level of courage, a different level of wisdom, a different level of love and compassion, to tell you the truth. I mean, we've got a big role to play as fathers, as leaders, as builders. And so don't allow the world to dismiss your masculinity. Your masculinity is not the problem, right? It's how we express that masculinity in the world. And so that's really where all of us are given a gift, because right now masculinity is almost a dirty word.
Oh yeah.
So
it's triggering.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
we can show up in a different way and show a different reflection of how beautiful masculinity, how constructive, how creative, how loving and compassionate it can be. Where I believe all the true strength of masculinity really starts shining really bright. So
agreed. Yeah, man.
Thank you.
You bet. Like I said, gentlemen, head on over to thedadedge.com/Friday56. Go out, live legendary. Take care.